You ever wonder where the novel came from? Or, modern journalism? You might picture a quiet study, or maybe a loud, bustling press room. But the real story? Well, it's way more chaotic than that. It all starts with a king effectively losing his job, a century of political turmoil, and a revolution that didn't just change a country, it completely changed how we tell stories forever.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at a kingdom in crisis when a king makes a shaky comeback. Then we'll get into the so-called Glorious Revolution, basically a bloodless coup. From there, we'll see how Parliament really took charge, creating a brand new world of readers. And finally, how all this political chaos accidentally gave birth to modern media as we know it.
So our story kicks off in 1660. King Charles II is back on the English throne after a pretty brutal civil war. But look, this was not some triumphant return to absolute power. He was actually a pretty weak ruler, and he was constantly fighting with Parliament, who, by the way, held the country's purse strings and had zero intention of letting go. The whole kingdom was just on edge.
Now, this constant power struggle created something totally new in English politics, the very first political parties. You had the Tories, who were pro-king, mostly backed by the old-school landed gentry and the church, and on the other side you had the Whigs. They represented the rising merchant and middle classes, and they wanted to put a serious leash on the king's power. These two groups had completely different visions for England's future.
And if all that political drama wasn't enough, the country then gets hammered by two massive disasters. In 1665, the Great Plague tears through, killing about 100,000 people. Just 1 year later, the Great Fire of London burns down a huge chunk of the capital. We're talking over 13,000 homes, even St. Paul's Cathedral. England was literally and figuratively on fire.
All of this simmering tension just finally boils over with Charles's successor, his brother, James II. Now, James wasn't into the whole delicate balancing act his brother tried to play. Nope, he had a much bigger and way more dangerous vision for what a king should be.
And here's where James II makes a huge mistake. He actually manages to unite his enemies against him. See, as a Catholic who wanted to be an absolute monarch, he was a direct threat to Protestant England and to the authority of Parliament. For both the Whigs and the Tories, this was a line you just did not cross.
So this brings the country's leaders to this radical, almost unthinkable question. If a king is fundamentally threatening the nation, could you just get rid of him? Could you fire a king? Was the monarch's power really absolute, or did it depend on the people he governed?
Parliament's answer was a resounding yes. In this wild move, the rival Whigs and Tories teamed up. They sent a secret invitation to the Protestant Dutch ruler, William of Orange, who happened to be married to James's own daughter, Mary, and basically asked him to invade England and take the crown. William shows up with his army, James's support completely evaporates, and he's out. And that right there was the Glorious Revolution.
But listen, this was not just about swapping one king for another. This was a complete rewrite of the rules of power. They were forging a whole new Britain.
And what this all meant was truly revolutionary. The whole idea of the divine right of kings, that a monarch's power comes directly from God, was over. Poof, gone. From now on, Parliament was supreme. The 1689 Bill of Rights made it official, putting hard limits on the monarch's power over the military and lawmaking and guaranteeing free elections. Power had officially shifted from the palace to the politicians. And with the weaker monarch, a new role had to be created to fill that power vacuum, the prime minister. This person, who had to have majority support in parliament to even govern, became the real head of the government. This newfound political stability laid the groundwork for everything that was about to happen next.
And what came next was, well, it was amazing. With the political wars mostly settled, England entered this long period of peace and economic growth. All that prosperity created a wealthy, urban middle class of merchants and bankers, and they were about to change the culture forever.
First off, just think about the sheer numbers. Across the 17th and 18th centuries, England's population literally doubled, climbing to almost 10 million people. All of a sudden, you've got more people, more money, and way more demand for, well, for everything, but especially for books.
And with that population boom came this incredible explosion in literacy. By the mid-18th century, it had just skyrocketed. Nearly half of all working men could now read. Think about that. For the first time in history, you have a mass audience with the ability, the money, and the free time to actually read. This new audience completely flipped the script on how you could be a writer. Before, an author needed to find a single, super rich patron to fund their work. But now they could go directly to the public. Through subscription publishing, hundreds of regular readers would prepay for a book, becoming something like collective patrons. An author could finally make a living selling their stories directly to the people who wanted to read them.
So let's recap. You've got political stability, you have a wealthy and literate middle class, and you have a new way for writers to get paid. The stage was perfectly set for a full-blown cultural explosion, the birth of modern media.
So the theaters, which had been shut down for almost 20 years, were finally reopened, and they started catering to this fashionable new audience with a witty, satirical new style of play called the comedy of manners, which basically just made fun of the scandals and social climbing of the rich.
But the real game changer was a completely new art form, the novel. Unlike the old epics about gods and kings and mythical heroes, novels told realistic stories about the everyday world. They were about characters that the new middle-class readers could actually see themselves in.
And authors started experimenting like crazy. You had realistic novels about familiar everyday life. You had epistolary novels, which were told entirely through letters between characters to give you this really intimate feeling. And you had these big, sprawling, picaresque novels that followed some charming rogue on an adventure through all levels of society.
At the exact same time, the other pillar of our modern media world was being built, journalism. This newly engaged public had this insatiable appetite for news, for information, for debate, and that led to the creation of countless daily and weekly newspapers and journals.
The spread of all these new ideas was supercharged by a new kind of social space. By 1750, London had something like 2,000 coffee houses. Seriously, these were the social networks of their day, public places where anybody could go to read the latest papers, do business, and argue about the big ideas of the age.
The sheer scale of this change is just captured perfectly by this bookseller, James Lackington, who wrote at the time that book sales had more than quadrupled in just 20 years. He said, in short, all ranks and degrees now read. Everybody was reading.
So here's the bottom line. A century of political revolution didn't just create a new government, it created a whole new kind of society, one that was stable, wealthy, and for the first time literate. And that new society demanded new ways to see itself and understand its world. And that's where the novel and the newspaper came from.
It's just a powerful reminder that the way we tell stories is so deeply connected to the political world we live in. A political revolution back in the 18th century gave us the novel and the newspaper. So it kind of makes you wonder, as we live through our own time of massive political and technological change, what new forms of media are being born right now?